I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We continue now reading in the Doctrine and Covenants. Our last reading was section 132. My last video was to go over some of the major things happening in the last year of Joseph Smith's life. Section 132 was written in July of 1843. We are now in June of 1834, not quite a year later. Remember that on the 7th, the Nauvoo Expositor printed their first and only article or paper. On the 10th, the City Council ordered it destroyed as a libelous nuisance in the community, which the City Marshal carried out. On the 12th, Joseph Smith and a few others are arrested for inciting a riot. They request a writ of habeas corpus. It is granted. They appear before the court on a hearing of habeas corpus. It is granted, and they are released. This is all on the 12th. On the 16th, Joseph Smith gives a sermon on the Godhead and the plurality of gods, which angers a lot of people. And on the 17th, him and many others are again arrested for inciting a riot in the destruction of the printing press. This case is tried before a Judge Wells, and all men are acquitted. But the mobs are gathering. The mobs from Illinois and Missouri, everything is coming together. Mobs are forming a blockade around Nauvoo, and tensions are just shooting through the roof. It is at this time that messages are sent out to the 12 apostles, recalling them back to Nauvoo because Joseph Smith is in danger. And if Joseph Smith is not there, the apostles become the next authority in the church. And so, regardless of the outcome, they are preparing for the worst, and they are recalling all the 12. It is also at this time that Governor Ford basically tells them he's not going to do anything. He will not interfere, and the Missouri mobs gather and are breathing out threats of invading Illinois in order to take Joseph Smith again. On the 22nd, about 5 days after he is acquitted, Joseph Smith tells his brother Hyrum that God has warned him to flee to the west. Flee to the Rockies, or you will be killed. Hyrum goes. He collects Joseph a few personal items. Him and Joseph leave in the early morning. They cross the Mississippi into Iowa. But later that afternoon, or maybe in the early evening, they receive word. Porter Rockwell, who was going to go with them, returned to Illinois, returned to Nauvoo to let Emma Smith know that they were safe, gather a few extra supplies before heading farther west. And Emma sends a letter back with him. And there are a couple other men who come as well. They meet with Joseph Smith, and Emma's letter pleads with Joseph Smith to return to Illinois and turn himself over to the authorities, saying that Governor Ford has promised that he will be protected, that the Illinois militia will be sent out to keep him safe. And a number of the men who come out start, accusing Joseph Smith of cowardice, that if he truly loved his friends and everything, he would stay and he would again fight this in court. And Joseph Smith, one of the more pitiful statements, when they all make these accusations against him, he simply says, "If my life is meaningless to my friends, it is meaningless to me. Let us return." And they return to Illinois, where Joseph Smith is arrested. Now, I can't remember the full details on this. He's arrested and taken out to Carthage, but about halfway there, for some reason, I can't remember, they have to return to Illinois. They have to return to Nauvoo to collect something and then go back to Carthage. And it is on that second trip out that he says his final goodbyes to his family. And with all that, we will now read section 135 of the Doctrine and Covenants. The first section not written by Joseph Smith. The heading states, Martyrdom of Joseph Smith the Prophet and his brother Hyrum Smith the Patriarch at Carthage, Illinois, June 27, 1844. Recorded in History of the Church, Volume 6, pages 629 to 631. This document was written by Elder John Taylor of the Council of the 12, who was a witness to the events. On a final note before I get into reading. Joseph Smith's own history. Of course, once he's dead, he can't write anymore, but the last entry he made was about his last acquittal on the 17th of June and recalling the 12 apostles. That's where his journal ends. The story of his flight to the Rockies and his return is given by others, who primarily Porter Rockwell. I believe William Clayton was also there, but I could be mistaken on that. So let us read. To seal the testimony of this book and the Book of Mormon, we announce the martyrdom of Joseph Smith the Prophet and Hyrum Smith the Patriarch. They were shot in Carthage jail on the 27th of June, 1844, about 5 o'clock p.m. by an armed mob painted black of from 150 to 200 persons. Hyrum was shot first and fell calmly, exclaiming, "I am a dead man." Joseph leaped from the window and was shot dead in the attempt, exclaiming, "O Lord, my God." They were both shot after they were dead in a brutal manner, and both received 4 balls. John Taylor and Willard Richards, 2 of the 12, were the only persons in the room at the time. The former was wounded in a savage manner with 4 balls, but has since recovered. The latter, through the providence of God, escaped without even a hole in his robe. John Taylor was shot 4 times, once in the arm, once in the leg, I believe once in the chest, which hit his pocket watch, and which is what saved his life. Can't remember where the 4th hit was. Willard Richards was there with them, and Joseph Smith had told him that there would be shooting on his right hand and on his left, but that he himself would be uninjured. When the mob came in, they shoved their guns through the door, trying to push it open. Willard Richards stood behind the door, batting the guns down as much as he could with his cane, but he remained behind the door, and so all the firing passed by him. Hyrum, his first shot was in the face, and that is when he cried, "I am a dead man." Joseph Smith, seeing his brother fall, he did try to go for the window. He was shot once from outside first, if I remember correctly. He was shot in the chest, and then he was shot in the back, which pushed him out the window, and he was shot twice more on the ground. There are some who believe that his shouting, "O Lord my God," was him going to the window and giving a sign to the Masons, because he was a Mason himself, and calling for assistance from other Masons that might be in the crowd. But that is somewhat speculation. We don't really know what he was doing. Verse 3. Joseph Smith the prophet and seer of the Lord has done more, save Jesus only, for the salvation of men in this world, than any other man who ever lived in it. In the short space of 20 years, he has brought forth the Book of Mormon, which he translated by the gift and power of God, and has been the means of publishing it on 2 continents, has sent the fullness of the everlasting gospel, which it contained, to the 4 quarters of the earth, has brought forth the revelations and commandments which compose this book of Doctrine and Covenants, and many other wise documents and instructions for the benefit of the children of men, gathered many thousands of the Latter-day Saints, founded a great city, and left a fame and name that cannot be slain. He lived great, and he died great in the eyes of God and his people, and like most of the Lord's anointed in ancient times, has sealed his mission and his works with his own blood, and so has his brother Hyrum. In life they were not divided, and in death they were not separated. When Joseph went to Carthage to deliver himself up to the pretended requirements of the law, 2 or 3 days previous to his assassination, he said, "I am going like a lamb to the slaughter, but I am calm as a summer's morning. I have a conscience devoid of offense toward God and towards all men. I shall die innocent, and it shall yet be said of me, he was murdered in cold blood." The same morning, after Hyrum had made ready to go, shall it be said to the slaughter? Yes, for it was so. He read the following paragraph near the close of the 12th chapter of Ether in the Book of Mormon, and turned down the leaf upon it. "And it came to pass that I prayed unto the Lord that he would give unto the Gentiles grace, that they might have charity. And it came to pass that the Lord said unto me, If they have not charity, it mattereth not unto thee. Thou hast been faithful. Wherefore thy garments shall be made clean. And because thou hast seen thy weakness, thou shalt be made strong, even unto the sitting down in the place which I have prepared in the mansions of my Father. And now I bid farewell unto the Gentiles, yea, and also unto my brethren whom I love, until we shall meet before the judgment seat of Christ, where all men shall know that my garments are not spotted with your blood. The testators are now dead, and their testament is in force. Hyrum Smith was 44 years old in February 1844, and Joseph Smith was 39 in December 1843. And henceforward their names will be classed among the martyrs of religion, and the reader in every nation will be reminded that the Book of Mormon and this book of Doctrine and Covenants of the Church cost the best blood of the 19th century to bring them forth for the salvation of a ruined world. And that if the fire can scathe a green tree for the glory of God, how easy it will burn up the dry trees to purify the vineyard of corruption. They lived for glory, they died for glory, and glory is their eternal reward. For age to age shall their names go down to posterity as gems for the sanctified. They were innocent of any crime, as they had often been proved before, and were only confined in jail by the conspiracy of traitors and wicked men, and their innocent blood on the floor of Carthage jail is a broad seal affixed to Mormonism that cannot be rejected by any court on earth, and their innocent blood on the escutcheon of the state of Illinois, with the broken faith of the state as pledged by the governor, is a witness to the truth of the everlasting gospel that all the world cannot impeach. And their innocent blood on the banner of liberty and on the Magna Carta of the United States is an ambassador for the religion of Jesus Christ that will touch the hearts of honest men among all nations. And their innocent blood, with the innocent blood of all the martyrs under the altar that John saw, will cry unto the Lord of hosts till he avenges that blood on the earth. What else can you say, really? Both of them, Joseph and Hyrum, were speaking prophetically. I go to the like a lamb to the slaughter, and it shall yet be said of me, he was murdered in cold blood. And Hyrum, quoting from Ether, the Gentiles are on their own now. I have done my work. And their innocent blood is the testimony. I believe it says in the New Testament that the testimony is only truly in force when there is the death of the testator. And that's what John Taylor is talking about here. The testimony of the ancient apostles is strong because they are martyrs. As many Christians will tell you, why would they willingly go to their deaths? Why would they willingly be tortured and persecuted as they were, if what they taught was not true? And the same can be said for Joseph Smith and Hyrum and many of the modern or Latter-day Saints. Why would these men endure the persecutions that they did? Why would they willingly die? That is a strong testimony. Now it also says, I love that, their innocent blood on the, innocent blood on the escutcheon of the state of Illinois, the broken faith of the state as pledged by the governor. I find it interesting, one of the greatest hymns we have in the modern day is Praise to the Man, written by W. Phelps to honor Joseph Smith after his martyrdom. In the second verse, as it states in our modern hymn books, long shall his blood, which was shed by assassins, plead unto heaven while the earth lauds his fame. But that's not the original lyrics that William Phelps wrote. When he first wrote this, it read, long shall his blood, which was shed by assassins, stain Illinois while the earth lauds his fame. And for many years in the temple, part of the ceremonies were a call to God, a prayer to God to bring vengeance against those who murdered the prophet and tormented and persecuted the saints. Now, much of this judgment of God was poured out on the United States during the Civil War. Before the Civil War, the Democratic Party had a stranglehold on the country, you might say. They were the powerhouse of the political establishment. The Whigs were making a rise. They were building up steam. But they lost. The Whigs completely vanished because they turned against the saints. The Democrats refused to help the saints. And in the Civil War, the Democratic Party was practically obliterated. And when it finally reared its head again 20 or so years later, though it bore the same name, it was a very different party. So the prophecies of Joseph Smith were fulfilled. The judgments of God came upon the nation, and the political party that refused to give the aid needed to the saints. But I'm going to leave that here. Our next reading, we turn to section 136, which is written by Brigham Young as the saints flee west. So I'll see you there.